What's going on, Imperials? It's Emperor Cubone here. Alright, we're finally doing it. A topic that just about every other PokeTuber has done: forgotten Pokemon. I know, it's not my usual brand of groundbreaking topics that rarely, if ever, have been discussed before. What, do you think I'm overselling it? But hopefully I can make some decent enough points and you'll still be entertained. There are several factors that can contribute to a Pokemon being forgettable. Whether it be outright similarities to other Pokemon, a lack of any prominent representation in the games or other media, or simply the misfortune of having no remarkable qualities whatsoever. But I think it is important to note at the top that everyone is different and reacts differently to these factors, which means what constitutes a forgettable Pokemon to some will not for others. So if your favorite, most iconic Pokemon appears, just know that I, and likely many others, did not have the same experiences that you did. So, here are the top 6 most forgettable Pokemon. Number 6. Bhem. I know this one might be a predictable pick, but here's the thing. I never thought that I would be placing LGM and Bhem on a list such as this. Back when Gen 5 came out, I actually really liked Bhem. Since being an avid science fiction fan, I've always liked extraterrestrial topics. So these clearly alien Pokemon were quite appealing because they said they were expressly from space, even to go so far as to have their names directly reference common alien terminology. So then, what happened? Well, to start off, Unova has a whole bunch of Pokemon. The most to date, actually, so that would be hard enough to stand out. But there are also a number of other psychic types from the region that all seem connected to one another, at least anecdotally, so it's a little hard to break through. And when all of those psychic types are also available far earlier in the game, it's not likely that you'll bother to pick this one up. And even if you were not using a psychic type, most people have a decent team by the 6th gym anyway, and this little alien guy might not seem so appealing. And after that, it was never even found in the opening generation games, only being available before the post-game in Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon, meaning a full generation and a half before you could even try and use it in a playthrough. But with all of the other options, you're not going to miss it. And if that weren't bad enough, even the developers forgot about this thing. Bhem can inexplicably learn the TM for Steel Wing now, because in Gen 5, it could learn TM51 Ally Switch. But in Gen 6, TM51 was changed to Steel Wing, and they just forgot to alter its compatibility. Some people try and claim it's some reference to UFOs or Area 51, but don't buy it. We all know that even the people in charge forgot that this Pokemon was in their roster. Maybe in a smaller region they could have had a chance, but as of right now, these big-headed Martians rarely get thought of first. Number 5. Kricketot. Honestly, most of the early game staple Pokemon are pretty memorable. I will rarely forget a regional bug, but here's the thing. The bug from Sinnoh is effectively usurped by a different line from later on. Bhem evolves into the more traditional butterfly-ish Pokemon that we generally expect from the bugs, while Kricketot simply becomes a conductor? Now some people will say, how can you forget Kricketune with a cry like that? Well, first of all, I never said I forgot Kricketune, just the first form. But even then, I don't usually play with the sound on, so again, different experiences will influence your memory. But part of what makes Kricketot so forgettable is that it evolves super early at level 10, but is also, conversely, extremely hard to use. When I first got Diamond, I was excited with the all-new Pokemon that I'd accumulated, but Kricketot's level-up moveset only consisted of Growl and Bide. So when your weak bug can only fight back by getting hit repeatedly first, there's no way it could ever evolve by itself. So you'll quickly box it and put it out of your mind. And apparently I did, because years later when I finally played Platinum, and a darkened one appeared on screen in a slightly different position, I thought, do they have new Pokemon in this? But when it became clear, I was honestly shocked to be reminded that this ineffectual bug existed. And to this day, I still fully expect people to talk about Bhem whenever the regional bug comes up in Sinnoh. And we might be better off that way because then at least we'd have options. Number 4. Cryogonal. Again, with Unova being so large, it's not a surprise that you might have some slip through the cracks. One such Pokemon to me is Cryogonal, the giant snowflake Pokémon. There are a number of unfortunate factors here that I will try to articulate. Firstly, the design is a little overdone. It's not really cute, but not really cool either. There are lots of sharp angles all over the place, and some people might not even know where to look for its face. But speaking of, it's got some kind of weird power orbs dribbling out of its mouth. This seems overly detailed for even a Digimon at this point, and despite its origins, every one of them looks exactly the same. What's more is that Cryogonal may have been used by the Ice-type gym leader, but it wasn't even its most prominent member. And you can only find it there near the Ice Gym anyway, which again means that you probably won't want to put a non-evolving Pokemon on your team that late in the game. I don't know that Cryogonal is bad in battle. It doesn't have a huge move pool, even though it can get good utility like Rapid Spin, but it can also learn Attract, which is completely pointless because it is a genderless Pokemon anyway. I think part of why I forget Cryogonal as much as I do is a classic case of be careful what you wish for. See, early on, Ice-type Pokemon were only paired together with other typings, leaving us to wonder what an Ice-type on its own would even be like until Gen 3. Then in Gen 4 we got a bunch more dual Ice types, but Gen 5 completely flipped it and had nothing but pure Ice, except for a legendary dragon. That lack of diversity, I think, hurt Cryogonal with two other options that had a little more personality. And by that, I mean any personality, because I can't read this stiff flake of snow. And when you don't have any defining characteristics other than hard to look at, you can't really be upset when I forget about you. Number 3. Gossifleur. Some people might wonder how a Pokemon from the newest games might end up on a forgotten list, but I gotta say, it is truly impressive how often Gossifleur has escaped my mind. Gossifleur was one of the Pokemon introduced before Sword and Shield, in a direct no less, so one might expect it to be pretty important. But not so much. In fact, by the time the game actually came out and I ran into Gossifleur, I said, oh yeah, that Pokemon! I was gonna put Pincurchin here because it's just a Galarian Pyukumuku, but in taking one last look through the decks, I was actually reminded of this Flower Child. But for me, forgetting that is truly impressive because I love redheads. I think part of the problem was that they also immediately revealed Gossifleur's evolution in the same trailer, so it robs the Pokemon of any mystique if you know the outcome. So you'll just say, oh, well, I guess I'll try something I don't already know then. I get that Eldegoss is Milo's signature Pokemon, but Gossifleur seems deliberately less important when really, if the gym weren't well over 2 hours into the game, Milo could have simply stayed with the first stage. But an even bigger issue to me is that Gossifleur is yet another in the long line of the short grasswoman trope. Eldegoss, too, seems just to be a fancier version of this, so not only does that make the Gen 8 Pokemon less unique, but you can find pretty much all of the other ones in Galar as well. So even with a nifty ability like Cotton Down, it's not enough for Gossifleur to stick out amongst the weeds of the other grass types. And though I'll always retain at least a vague memory of the British ripoff of Jumpluff, I'll probably forget its previous stage again by the time we finish this video. Number 2. Carbank. When I think of the fairy type in Gen 6, I generally think about how homogeneous they all are, and that there are too many without a secondary typing. A little more variety, like with Dedenne, would help to strengthen their ranks. And then, only when looking do I remember that Carbank is amongst their ranks as well. And even worse is that Carbank is right beside Dedenne in the decks, so there's really no excuse, other than Carbank must just be terribly bland. This Pokemon is simply a chunk of rock with a few crystals poking out, and some white fluff? I don't know what's going on here, but when you combine a lackluster design with the fact that it's got 50s across the board except for its defenses, it really doesn't scream, remember me. It feels like Carbank is just the first stage of something that needs to evolve, and not just a tangential relation to Diancie, because even supposedly becoming a legendary isn't enough for me to have Carbank stick. And I could have sworn before the games came out that they were advertising different forms for Carbank, which at least would have been something, but no, we just get the same old lumpy spinning top that will never grow, never change, and never do anything to set itself apart in any meaningful way. For some reason, Carbank can only learn 2 fairy-type moves, so why is it even a fairy type at all? really the Kalos region didn't have so many new Pokémon. Then again, neither did the Alola region, but at least all of them seem to have something to make them stand out in your head. So the fact that out of the few Kalos Pokémon, there are any that are so unremarkable that you can go years without thinking about them is really kind of sad. Number 1. Chingling. Without a doubt, the Pokémon I forget exists more than any other is the Gen 4 baby Pokémon, Chingling. Just to start off, I would like to say that I have nothing against Chimecho. It's a perfectly respectable Pokémon that had an endearing presence in the anime and was a perfectly fine one-off. Except it wasn't a one-off because the very next generation created the new baby form that, instead of a gorgeous wind chime, is just a bell. I realize that they're both Japanese in origin, but just because things come from the same country doesn't mean that it would make sense for a baseball to turn into an apple pie. Now, most baby Pokémon were later additions to their evolutionary line, but even amongst the crop brought in with Sinnoh, Chingling still pales in comparison. None of the others seem completely out of place in their family, like they have reason to be there, whether it be in lore or biology. But Chingling has no such justification for its existence. If anything, Chimecho should have gotten an evolved form, not an even weaker one for even less people to use, and it's not like that would have been that hard with the glut of evolutions tacked onto the end of the Dex in Sinnoh. They could have even done both, like with Roselia, tying these two Hoenn Pokémon together in a unique way. At least then I would remember that there would be something at the other end. Furthermore, I wouldn't be surprised if there were people out there who didn't even know that Chingling is related to Chimecho, because for some reason it evolves through happiness, which isn't likely to happen, but only at night. Too much trouble for most trainers. And if they don't go digging around in the Dex, how are they supposed to know that this Jingle Bell turns into anything? Not to mention, anywhere you can find Chingling, there are other, better Psychic types to use instead. So if you can't convince people to use you in your home region when you're bright and shiny and new, you really think you'll find better opportunities later when the options are even more bloated? This is the same generation that has Lumineon, who is now ironically well known for being the most forgettable Pokémon, but there's nothing exceptional about Chingling. Nothing to really tie it to the region in which it resides. At least with some of the other evolutions that are called Dex filler, they have something to make an impression even if it's just that I hate them. But despite Chingling being a household object, it doesn't elicit any feelings one way or the other. It's just there, and as soon as you're not looking at it, Chingling immediately leaves your mind. An unnecessary pre-evolution to a late-game one-off with no discernible gimmicks is just about the perfect storm for being forgettable. So, Chingling, best of luck trying to stick around. As I said, each person's experience will lead them to forget different Pokémon, but for me, these ones are even more forgettable than that Psychic-type move called Amnesia. Which Pokémon do you find to be the most forgettable? Let me know down in the comments. Also, be sure to leave a like, share this video, and subscribe so that you too can become an Imperial today. And we'll see you around next time!